You can't change the system because the only thing that you can change is yourself. You can decide to go down this path of understanding, of self-inquiry, understanding who you are, transforming yourself. You can go down that path, and that means transforming yourself. When you do that, you become a context of transformation for the others surrounding you, because you become a source of inspiration. And when many like you come together and they resonate with one another, then you start getting an ecosystem. And then when you have an ecosystem, emerging ecosystem that vibrates higher, that already is in that path of transcending the mindset, which already starts thinking out of the mindset, then that generates, it becomes a huge context for transformation for everything. It attracts more people, it attracts transformational ideas, and things start to change.
Welcome to Reinventing Capitalism, the podcast where I, Claudia Thomas, decode the success of for-profit impact businesses through the stories of their founders. Our goal is to inspire you towards a purpose-driven career, because life's too short for boring jobs and soul-crushing corporations. Quick note before we get back to the episode. Just give me 30 seconds of your time. Two things. The first is a huge thank you for listening and tuning into the show week after week. It means the world to me. And the second is that we are just getting started. If you enjoy what we do here, please join the 14% of people that listen to this podcast regularly and follow us on this app. I promise to do everything in my power to make this show as good as I can, now and into the future. Thank you. Thank you, Xavi, for being here with me today. I'm super excited to talk about what we've been just discussing. So how can we bridge the gap between business and capitalism, but also consciousness and purpose? So I wanted to give a brief history of where you come from. You built Voxel, one of the top financial softwares in the travel industry, and you succeeded amongst every external measure out there, but something started to feel off, and that's what made you sell your company. So tell us a little bit what drove that transition.
It was something that built up over time. It didn't happen overnight.
I can imagine.
Yeah. In fact, when I created Voxel, I wasn't thinking I'm going to create a business to make a successful exit so that I can retire and live an amazing life like many people who create businesses do. I just wanted to have fun with the experience. I didn't really even know why I was creating a business. I just felt it was going to be fun. I had never had the idea of creating a business. And it was a night out with some friends that we had this crazy idea of starting to sell wine over the internet and creating a virtual wine cellar, which was actually the first one in Europe. And it was just a fun idea. We wanted to have fun. But I had never before thought of creating a business. So we did it. It was not so successful as a wine cellar, but we were very lucky, let's say, that some of our partners helped us reorient the business in a different direction, in a B2B direction. And that's what took us eventually to creating a very, very successful business in the travel space, an electronic invoicing and payment system. It's hard to imagine how you go from a virtual wine cellar to a B2B transactional system or electronic invoicing system in the travel space, but that's what happened over time. And that was really successful. We did very well. And we realized that part of our success was the fact that we had created a very people-centric culture. We became the best place to work in Spain for 2 years in a row. And we were just happy doing what we were doing. We were not thinking of selling the company. In fact, whenever I was getting proposals, I was thinking, okay, what am I going to do with the money? Create another business. It's been very hard to create this one and to become successful. I just want to enjoy it, you know? I don't want to go through all the suffering again. But then one thing led to another, and this culture that we had created actually made us realize that the reason why we were enjoying so much that company was because we had a higher purpose, which was connected with the idea of creating happy workplaces. So we started doing more and more of the things that contributed to create a great culture, which in turn contributed to attract very talented people committed with the purpose of the company, and that drove the business. So we had a virtuous circle between culture and business. And some of the things that we were doing that were more connected with the culture and with the purpose than with the business, were things like the Festival of Consciousness, which is an event that originally had the purpose of fostering a more conscious way of understanding businesses. And that evolved, and it became an event to explore the nature of consciousness from a scientific perspective and also from a spiritual perspective, and also to explore how consciousness manifests through humanity in different dimensions like business, education, science, art, and others. And that's when I started to really tune in with this idea that my passion was every time more driven by this higher purpose that had nothing to do with make money. And it was more connected with the idea of using that money to create happiness in the world. And that was a progressive process. It didn't happen overnight, as I said before. It took several years, and little by little this passion built up until I got to a point that I was like, wow, I really want to spend the rest of my life doing things like this, creating events like the Festival of Consciousness, fostering this type of science that's connected with the idea of understanding who we are, instead of creating technology just for the purpose of building successful businesses, right? I think we are getting to a moment where we have to realize that concept of business has been very successful in taking humanity out of scarcity, but it's about time that we appreciate the abundance we're creating and start changing the mindset that's taken us here to develop the new mindset that's going to take us there. So that's long
in
story.
A nutshell.
It's not really in a nutshell, but that's the answer to your question.
No, thank you. It seems that this transition stemmed from an identity shift as well. This passion brought you to become like a new Xavi. I think I want to unpack what it means to develop this consciousness and how we apply that into the business world. So let's start by understanding how can we as a society develop this consciousness?
For me, so essentially what your question really taps into the concept of transformation. How do you transform your mindset so that you appreciate reality from a totally different perspective? That's the idea of elevating consciousness, of generating a higher level of consciousness, has to do with this higher understanding of about who you are. Today, science is essentially driven by the belief that everything can be reduced to matter. Reductionism is the main pillar of science today, right?
So science brings up a big constraint to how we see the world.
Yes, and we're not even aware of that, because when you look at how we behave, our socioeconomic system, and you look at the behavior, I think we can all agree that this behavior is quite materialistic, right? I mean, that's obvious.
Yeah.
What's not so obvious is that this materialism stems from the materialistic scientific understanding of reality, which in turn stems from the reductionistic perspective of reality that science has developed over the course of the last few centuries. We went from the religious understanding of reality, where where dogmas defined reality, right? The Bible was the source of the truth, and we developed science. And this opposition of science to religion also generated an opposition to spirituality. And it's not the same thing. Spirituality has to do with the legitimate search of who you are, right? This legitimate attempt to understand who you are. And that's the origin of religion, but it's not religion. So religion, in fact, has, in a way, perverted the source, the spiritual source, which it came from. So the problem is that science, in its opposition to religion, also generated an opposition to anything that is smelled like spirituality.
Correct.
Right? So, and that's how reductionism became a dogma. So science essentially today used the reductionistic dogma to develop itself. And I'm not against it, because it's been super useful. I think that this reductionistic paradigm was very, very valuable to develop science in its earliest stages. I think everything that came out of that, the Industrial Revolution, the technological progress, the business world, and everything stems from that. And it's literally taken us out of the Middle Ages, right? So I'm not against that, obviously. I don't want to go back there. But I think that paradigms are useful for what they are useful for. When you try to extend the paradigm before its usefulness, then it becomes a problem. It's like a star that, after accomplishing its mission in the universe and becomes a white dwarf, doesn't want to explode because it wants to keep burning, right? When there is nothing else to burn. So I think that's what's happening now with the scarcity mindset. The scarcity mindset is the son of materialism, which is the son of reductionism. And we're trapped in the scarcity mindset. What's going on now, if you pay attention, you'll see that the world of business, which is designed to fight scarcity, is running out of scarcity to continue fueling this world. And what are we doing? Because we're running out of scarcity, because we've been so great fighting it, and there's no scarcity left. Now we're designing new sources of scarcity. Psychological scarcity, which is a fake type of scarcity. It's something that's only in our mind, and that's what it means when people from marketing say we need to create needs for these products that we're creating. That's crazy. In the past, a main principle in marketing was you cannot create needs. You have to identify needs. Now we've shifted that around. And we now say you can create needs. In fact, we need to create needs
to keep it coming,
to keep the show running.
Going, exactly.
Yeah. But essentially, what I'm trying to say is that I'm not against reductionism.
Yeah.
Reductionism served a purpose. It was the foundation of science. But that doesn't mean science needs to be reductionistic forever.
Agreed.
It's about time to say, okay, this has been useful, but now materialism is not useful anymore. Because now we're in a world of abundance and we're free to really appreciate and start understanding, to start connecting with our true essence. And then we'll realize that our true essence is not material, which means that reductionism makes no sense. And then there's an opportunity for science to open up to spirituality. And there's an opportunity now for bridging what had been diverging for all these centuries, science and spirituality. Unfortunately, I see that happening more and more because more and more scientists talk about reality in terms that resemble more and more what the spiritual masters have been saying for millennia. So I think we're on that track.
No, good track. How does that affect business? So how does that contribute to the concept of conscious capitalism?
Yeah, it's funny because I'm how to say this, what I'm describing cannot be reconciled easily with your question, right? What I'm saying is like, okay, so what do we do now with this? Do we throw everything away because it makes no sense? And the answer is no. We don't need to throw everything away. We just need to be aware of what I'm saying. If we're aware of what I'm saying, we'll understand that the world that we've been living in, the mindset we've been living with, that's driven the world we have today, if we let it evolve following the natural course of events, it's going to become something else. So we have two choices. We can let it drift its own way, like a star, and evolve and become something else, or we can resist and suffer the consequences. Because if we stick to the old mindset, when the world has changed, or starts changing, the context changes, but you don't change the mindset that drives your behavior, then you become a species that's not suitable to that context. And then Darwin told us what happens to the species that don't adapt correctly to the changing context,
the
right?
greatest of the fittest.
Exactly. So natural selection will take care of us.
Exactly.
And it's what's going to happen. This idea that we can destroy ourselves is a possibility. It's if we keep resisting the natural course of events and we keep going against our own nature, our true nature, if we keep believing that this behavior we've had so far defines our true nature, we'll actually end up destroying ourselves. It's a perfect possibility. The other alternative is, okay, let's appreciate that this is not going to last forever, and let's start thinking in terms of what needs to happen next, right? That's the main point That's the starting point, okay, for what needs to happen. Now, in terms of businesses, it means that we need to also understand, part of understanding what I'm saying means understanding that the world of business, the way it's designed, if we stop creating sources of artificial scarcity, there will be someday that there's no scarcity left at all, right? So there will be no business opportunities unless we create artificial sources of scarcity. That's going to happen. I don't know how long it's going to take, but it's going to happen. It's going to happen at an accelerated pace because of, artificial intelligence, quantum computing, and progresses we're making with energy. There's multiple technology fronts converging that accelerate this process that's taking us out of scarcity. When that happens, unless we continue creating artificial sources of scarcity will be over. So there's a transition period between now and then. If we start doing things now, if we realize we're going there, we'll start doing things now. We'll start realizing that probably when we get there will be no jobs for everyone. And little by little, this will start happening. So we'll need to start shortening the number of days we work, the number of hours per day we work. We'll need to start creating financial vehicles for the people to survive. This idea that today we already have, which is the state pays for education and for certain things, we'll need to start enlarging the number of things that our states pay for, because people will progressively have less jobs, right? And so that's progressively gonna change generation after generation. We'll start changing the mindset. We'll start seeing as natural that we go in that direction. Now we are terrified. We're terrified. It's like, we're gonna lose our job. Artificial intelligence is horrible. Hey, it is great. It means we're leaving scarcity behind. It is great. We need to start raising awareness that that's what's going on, changing the mindset. Instead of being afraid of that, we need to be enthusiastic about that. We need to accelerate that, and we need to start taking measures to, be ready for when that starts happening. So in terms of businesses, it means that little by little, businesses will extinguish themselves as stars, little by little. What businesses will last longer? Those that know how to adapt to the new context that's emerging. And what businesses are those? Well, if you look at what's happening today, you will see that because of artificial intelligence and all the technological progress, what's happening is that most companies are getting depleted of human resources because technology is taking over labor, right?
The tasks.
So what jobs are being lost? The least qualified. So only people who can still do things that technology cannot do are the ones that keep their jobs, right?
Yeah.
So who are those people? The most highly qualified, who are in turn the best paid, right? So those people who are best paid are people that have more money than they need to survive, so they have more time also to think about what they appreciate in life. So those people are more connected with their purpose, and those people are the ones that are starting to look for companies and jobs that also fulfill that purpose. So what I already see happening, and it's going to be happening more and more, is that companies that don't connect what they do with purpose, with positive impact, and with all those things will also become victims of natural selection, because the talent that will be left, which will be the most highly qualified, will basically go to companies that offer those kind of purposeful jobs, right?
But what do you envision? Like, if companies are going away and we have technology that it's going to take away the tasks from, let's say, the average employee, what it's going to be left of a company? Is it going to be like a representation of a purpose and a mission operated by artificial intelligence, and then people will have to find another purpose? So the work purpose is kind of left behind. The average, let's say, not the skilled people that you are talking about that will be able to choose.
So companies will need to develop a higher purpose to survive, and because they'll be competing for talent that is looking for purpose. So if a company doesn't have a higher purpose, will not be able to find the kind of talent that they need. So that's one thing. So you're saying, what happens when a company essentially disappears because there's no business left there? Okay, that's a different problem. When it's like, for instance, to give you a simple example, what happened with the encyclopedias, right? Wikipedia took over that space. So the business opportunity just disappeared. The video stores, same thing, right? So that's already happening. Some industries get demonetized. Technology has the effect of demonetizing complete industries. So when an industry gets demonetized, that industry just disappears as a business. But the service that the industry provides stays. It just takes a different form that's not based on a business concept. Wikipedia serves the purpose of what before was a business. So if you think about it in these terms, what you see is that when an industry that previously was a business is completely demonetized, what's left is a platform. It's a technological platform that serves the same purpose of what used to be a business, but it's no longer a business because the margin has become zero.
Okay.
Right? That's what happened to those businesses. And that's going to happen little by little at an accelerated pace.
Okay.
We've seen samples of that, and it will keep happening. And then we'll see more concentration when we talk about the concentration phenomenon. That's essentially companies that their margins get so reduced that the only way to survive is by concentrating. So little margins with huge volumes allows them to survive, but there will be a point that not even huge volumes will allow them to survive, right? So little by little, we'll see like entire industries are going to be disappearing. So people, once left, will compete for the talented, the kind of skills that are available in the market, and they will need to offer these purposeful jobs to those people, because those people will be, that's what they will want. Now the big question is, what happens to the others, to the ones that can't find a job?
Yeah.
And that's where society, it is mandatory that we develop this new mindset, this prosperity, abundance mindset, whatever you want to call it, that's totally different from the scarcity mindset. It's the abundance mindset is more connected with the idea of sharing than with the idea of competing. It's connected with the idea of appreciating that we already have enough. Once you have enough, you want to share it. You don't why accumulating it?
Yeah.
Why? That makes no sense. If we learn to do that, and I think that the people that are at the top of Maslow's pyramid, because they have the resources to do that, are the ones that first of all should develop that mindset. If that happens, if we are able as a society to do that, we'll be able to take care of all these people, because there will be more than enough for everyone. I hear many times people saying, well, if people didn't have to work, they would be lazy, they would stay in bed looking at the ceiling and be, I don't know. But who cares? Who cares?
They won't need to do anything anyways.
Exactly. I mean, I think it's great that people don't need to be forced to do something they don't like in order to survive. For most of our history, that's how humanity has been, right? It's just been in the last 10,000 years that we've been driven by this mindset that in order to survive, we need to do things we don't like.
Yeah.
That's crazy. That's anti-human, really. Nature doesn't work like that. Now we have an opportunity to return to our own nature, and I'm, by the way, convinced that will not mean the end of human collaboration. What's going to happen, I'm sure, is that people will be driven by their talents, and they will not lay in bed watching the ceiling all day long. They'll be doing what they feel like doing. Maybe they'll lie in bed for a while, but eventually they'll get up and they'll start doing what
they love.
They love, right? Like kids.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, doing things with your hands, doing art, working out.
Or coming together and, spending time together, or doing things like the Festival of Consciousness, right? The Festival of Consciousness is not for profit. Nobody gets paid to be there. Why do we do it? It's crazy. People do it because they feel like doing it, because they feel they're connected. They resonate with the higher purpose of the festival, and they want to do it because they think it's the right thing to do. And there will be many more opportunities for people to do things like that. The world will be a much better place. Instead of fighting and killing each other for the little resources left in the planet, we'll just be enjoying enjoying life and sharing our happiness with each other. It's a totally different way of understanding life.
Totally different. Actually, my plan today was to talk to you about conscious capitalism, but I think now we've put together so many concepts that I feel that it's even like another system. I think we're past conscious capitalism. Like, we've talked about like very purposeful companies, the fact that only very skilled employees will be able to work for them. There will be others that will be able not to work because of this abundance that we've created. The role of AI and technology, like where does that leave the system? Like in which system will we live in? Like you've also mentioned, I think, universal basic income, or that's where I thought that you were leading. Where does that leave the structures and systems that we've lived up until today?
You know, the answer to that is difficult, and probably if we could look into the future, right? If you and I could look into a crystal ball and see the future, and we say, wow, this is it, and we came here and we said it, people would think we're crazy, probably, because the answer to what's going to happen, because it's not going to come from the existing mindset, right? The existing mindset tries to find solutions to the problems it generates. Now, it's impossible that any of those solutions transforms the mindset, right? The mindset finds solutions to its problems so that we leave the mindset alone, right? So whenever we think in terms of solutions to the problems, we are, without realizing, we're perpetuating the source of all the problems, which is the mindset. Because it's not a matter of how do we solve the problems we have today. Solving the problems is giving painkillers to the disease so we don't feel the symptoms. The problem is the mindset itself. So problem solving is not the solution. In fact, the idea that we can solve the problems forever is the problem, right?
Okay.
We cannot continue thinking in terms of we'll keep solving problems. We need to solve the problems we are creating because otherwise we collapse. But at the same time, we need to think in terms of, okay, how do we get out of this mindset and we do things that are revolutionary? And that's the real answer to the question, how do we change the system, right? And the answer, I guess, is you can't change the system because the only thing that you can change is yourself. And that's very frustrating because it's like, okay, I already changed. I already know.
What do I do
want
now?
To change the others because I'm fine, right? And that's the challenge, that you cannot change anybody. All you can do is, one, change yourself. You can change yourself. You can decide to go down this path of understanding, of self-inquiry, understanding who you are, transforming yourself. You can go down that path. And that means transforming yourself. When you do that, you become a context of transformation for the others surrounding you because you become a source of inspiration. And when many like you come together and they resonate with one another, then you start getting an ecosystem. And then when you have an ecosystem, emerging ecosystem that vibrates higher, that already is in that path of transcending the mindset, which already starts thinking out of the mindset, then that generates, it becomes a huge context
movement
for transformation for everything. It attracts more people, it attracts transformational ideas, and things start to change. And then those ideas that come from that new ecosystem are totally transgressive, right? It's nothing like what it's in the system today. The ideas about universal base income are in the, I would say, are in the boundaries of the mindset. It's like, I'm not sure if they're still inside the mindset or already a bit outside. Could be a way to preserve the mindset, or they're really breaking away from the mindset. I'm not 100% sure, but I'm sure that there will be things that we can't even imagine. We can't even imagine what's going to happen once we start all resonating with these ideas and coming together, and we start just transforming ourselves as a community, as a species, really.
Hi, can I ask you a quick favor? Every week, we dive into the stories of founders that do more than just make money. Our mission is to prove that a career in impact can be both purposeful and financially sustainable. If you believe in creating meaningful work, share today's episode with one friend who's ready to make a difference. It would mean a great deal to me. Your support is what keeps this show alive and growing. Thank you.
I wonder, like, I think something that drives people is finding their purpose. So, and one way of finding your purpose is elevating yourself and connecting to your own energetic vibration. It seems that if people weren't able to work, then people would be more connected to some sort of life purpose, because they would be doing what they love, and when you do what you love, you have more passion with what you do, and then this becomes a chain. But if you can't, how do you find purpose at work?
If you can't, what do you mean if you can't?
If you can't, like, if this scenario doesn't become true, let's say, and we have the status quo now, and it takes a bit longer to reach this scenario with the current system that we have now, and with what you just have described, like, how do you connect with yourself and like this elevated state of consciousness? How would you describe purpose at work, and do you think it's even something that we should be looking for? Because that's like what I try to get people to do in this space, in this podcast, and listening to you, it's making me question whether if that's even something that people should be doing.
Okay, so I'm not 100% sure if I understand the question, but let me answer what I think I understand. Okay. So there's two things here. One thing is the company, and the purpose of the company. Another thing is the individuals in the company and their own purpose within the company. An idea that I've been looking at recently is this idea that we're in a process. If you look at the evolution of businesses, right, from the beginning of capitalism until today, it's obvious that capitalism today is not the same as capitalism in the times of Karl Marx, or even at the beginning, before even Adam Smith, because Adam Smith identified capitalism, which was something that had been going on for a couple of centuries before him, and he realized, oh, there's something going on here, right? But nobody called it capitalism. It took 3 centuries, right, to come up with the term. So if we look at the beginning of that, how it's been evolving until today, there's been a process, right? Underlying that process, there's always been the scarcity mindset, right? The world is scarce. We need to fight a scarcity. And then we come up with the idea of businesses as a way to fight a scarcity. You know, business needs a scarcity. If there's no scarcity, there's no business potential, right? So that's a fundamental axiom in the world of business. You need a scarcity to run a business. So if you look at what's happened since the beginning of capitalism until today, you can see how all along the scarcity mindset, which is driven by the survival instinct, has been there driving what we want to survive. We live in a world that's scarce. We need to combat scarcity, and we found these tools, right, that foster technological progress, and that helps us become more abundant, right, and eliminate scarcity out of the world. Now, that's what's been going on since the beginning of capitalism. Now, what's happened to the concept of purpose in all this process? All along, purpose has been survival, right? We do this to survive. But little by little, we've been injecting a higher purpose in our worldview. At the beginning, it was just survival. But then at some point, we realized, oh, this is cool. Adam Smith said, this is cool because these guys trying to survive, they create businesses, and those businesses are useful. The concept of the invisible hand was this idea that magically, when we pursue our own self-interest, we're creating common good, right? So we started appreciating, oh, there's a purpose that's emerging out of our survival instinct. This is magical. This never happened before, right? It was a great shift in the way of fighting scarcity. And little by little, this idea that we need to be more purposeful has become stronger and stronger, right? And not so long ago, we came up with the idea of impact investment and benefit corporations, the B Corp movement, the for benefit movement, conscious capitalism. All those ideas are entry points to this major idea that eventually purpose should be driving everything, right? Instead of being the collateral effect of, looking only for our own self-interest. It's been quite magical that chasing our own self-interest, we've been able to create common good. But that's because there was so much scarcity in the past that any business you created was good for fighting scarcity and hence generating common good. But now, when we're running out of scarcity, the idea of just looking for your self-interest, it's generating psychological scarcity, which is not good, right? That's where we are now.
How do you define, psychological scarcity?
If I give you an example, it is very clear. Psychological scarcity begins, let me say artificial scarcity, which is psychological, okay? Because there's some sorts of psychological scarcity that we could say. It's okay. Artificial scarcity, it's a type of psychological scarcity that goes beyond what's reasonable. For instance, fast fashion. Fast fashion is a very clear example of psychological scarcity that goes beyond this, beyond what's reasonable. Fast fashion emerges from the concept of fashion, which emerges from the need to, be protected from the cold, right? Mm-hmm. That's a real need. It's a real need. Then we turn that need into something that goes beyond protection. It has to do with psychological fact, like we want to be loved, we want to look good, to be loved, right? So that we took something that begins with a physical need to something that enters in the psychological realm, right? It's like, okay, now I also want to look good. It's fine, it's okay. You want to be loved, fine. The minute that you need to change your wardrobe every month because you don't want to look the same every day, that becomes sick, right? That's no longer a real need. It's an artificial need that's psychological. It's not true that you need that. And the problem with that is that it's not only a disease, it's also a disease for the planet, because thanks to that, the fashion industry has become the most polluting of the world, or the second most polluting. And there's an entire desert in Chile, the Atacama Desert, that's basically full of clothes, still with the label on, because many times people buy online, they return the goods, and instead of reselling them, they dump them to the garbage because it's cheaper than recycling them and selling them again. So that's the answer to what is psychological scarcity.
Okay.
Yeah. What's been happening is that we've been becoming more and more aware of the importance of putting purpose up front. We've gone from there's no purpose, I just want to survive, which is a primitive form of purpose, right? Survival, fighting a scarcity. And then all of a sudden, wow, we realize that, this is cool. It generates something purposeful. But as a consequence, right? And now that we are entering these issues of creating psychological scarcity to keep the show running, is when we say, wait a minute, maybe we should put purpose up front so we start doing stupid things, right? We need to stop stupidity, because creating artificial sources of scarcity is stupid. It's really dumb. So I think that's the turning point where we say, let's stop this. Purpose should be the driver. So that's a shift. Now, that's where impact investment, all these movements are taking over, and they are trying to create or foster the idea that companies should have a higher purpose. What's the next step, which is what really changes? That's out of the mindset. The current mindset is business driven, right? The mindset says running businesses is good. We need to keep creating models that keep the businesses running. What is the idea that's beyond the mindset? That's transgressive. That's okay. Yeah, we can do better than that. This idea is when you go beyond this point of turning a business into a business with purpose, and you go to the idea where you're driven by purpose, and that purpose takes the form of an organization, which could be a business or not. It could be a nonprofit, it could be a business, but it's a purpose taking form of an organization as opposed to the other way around. You see, that's super transformative, because it's the opposite of what the mindset tells you should keep doing.
But can this be any type of purpose? Because every organization supposedly has a purpose. Coca-Cola could be within this description.
When I say purpose, I'm implicitly talking about purposes that are aligned with human progress, okay? With the natural course of evolution, right? Okay. Not with the opposite course, which is what we are doing now.
We needed to clarify that.
Yeah,
actually,
it's important.
there's this piece of research that I love, which separates or finds three types of purposes to a company. There's product-led purpose, which would be any company driven by their mission, but it can be against or for human progress, so it could be anything. Then there's a social-led purpose, and then there's culture-led purpose. I wanted to touch base on the last one because it's what you started the interview by saying, which was that you built your company based off of the premise that you wanted to make a happy workplace and that you wanted to focus on the people. How do you build that? How do you think of creating this type of culture?
In my case, I didn't think it happened. And I guess the reason why it happened is because none of us knew anything about businesses.
Okay.
So
you could create whatever you wanted.
We were not following the manual. We're following our intuition, and we did things in ways that had nothing to do. If we had business advisors, they would have thought we were crazy. I remember the first time we hired a finance director. He couldn't believe that we hadn't done a budget ever. We had never budgeted anything.
It seemed like you were also obviously very talented, but also quite lucky without knowing what you were getting into.
I'm very grateful many times for being so lucky. At the same time, I think luck is not really that's a very interesting point. What is luck? What is
Good
luck?
question.
Right? What is luck? From a certain perspective, you could say you've been super lucky, right? Because you've been doing crazy things and you're so lucky that you survived doing the opposite of what the manual says that you should be doing, right? And yes, and I'm very grateful for that. But then at the same time, I'm thinking, hey, wait a minute. The manual is based on a reasonable understanding of how things work. We've created this mental idea of things should be this way for them to work because they work in a certain way. But what happens when instead of using your rational understanding, your reason to decide how you do things, you follow your intuition. You do things that you resonate with because you think they are the right things to do, right? People will say that's stupid, that's crazy, and if you do that, you're gonna kill yourself. But it turns out that you do it, and then you do better than if you had done it the other way around.
And it works.
And then we call that luck. So I'm every time less and less confident in the existence of luck. I think that it depends. I don't know to what extent luck is really true. I think that when you do things genuinely out of love, if you want, out of trust,
that intuition that we were describing,
resonance, when you do things like that, you're tapping into a source of intelligence that you cannot even understand where it's coming from. It's not rational, but it's, I think, much more powerful than rational intelligence, and it usually takes you in the right direction.
Yeah.
Better than when you follow your reason. In fact, if I look at the mistakes I've made in my life, the things that I call mistakes, most of them were because I didn't follow my intuition.
That's so powerful. I read this book called The Almanac of Naval Ravikant. Have you heard of it?
Yeah, I heard of it.
He speaks about this. He speaks about the fact that there are 4 different types of luck. Long story short, there's the luck that you build for yourself, so generating opportunities for yourself, and then there's the luck where it's actually coincidental. But he doesn't talk about what you just described, which is the gut feeling, we could say, and tapping into this intuition. Is there any way that you can specifically develop this gut feeling? Like, how do you trust it?
Yeah, I think we all have that. And there's 2 things you can do with that intuition that we all naturally have. When we're born is when probably we're the most intuitive, right? I think intuition is something, it's an ability of the brain. It's a way that the brain has to tap into that higher intelligence. In a way, if you think about it, the difference between intuition and rational intelligence is not so big in terms of how to use it. Because if I ask you, how do you use your rational intelligence? Describe me, how do you do to think, right? How do you think? What do you do with your brain to think? You'll be like, hey, I don't know. I want to think and I think. I just do it, right? But if I tell you now, intuitively, answer me this question, right? Immediately you put your brain in thinking mode, which is rational mode, and you immediately block your intuition. I think what happens is that, and I'm not a neuroscientist, but I have the intuition that what happens here is that the 2 operating modes, intuitive versus rational, disable each other. right? When you're thinking rationally, this goes down. The intuition goes down. When intuition is on, reason is not active. What happens though is that when you get an intuitive idea, immediately your reason
You need to rationalize it.
analyzes it and it says, okay, this is a good idea or not, and it starts thinking. Now, that's the problem. That's the problem, and that answers your question. If when you get an intuition, you let your reason to take over and decide rationally whether to follow it or not, you're blocking and blocking and blocking this all the time until one day it stops and you are totally driven by this reason, right? If you let your intuition drive your life, little by little, you'll realize what I was telling you before, that intuition is not stupid and it makes better decisions than your reason many times, most of the times. And that's what develops the trust. It's a virtuous circle, right? Sometimes you need courage, right? You get the intuitive idea and you're like, oh shit, this is telling you this is crazy. Don't do that, please, right? And you may listen to this and say, okay, I won't do it. Problem. But if you decide to do it, if you're courageous enough and you do it, what happens next is that you experience the outcome. If the outcome is positive, it's like, wow, this is great. I'm gonna do it the next time.
Yeah.
The more you do it, the more trustworthy you become in that mechanism, and then the more you learn how to use it. But unfortunately, we're so much driven by this rational cognitive mode of operating our brain that most people have literally blocked their intuition completely.
That's so sad.
It is probably that's the reason why the world is stuck in the scarcity mindset.
Yeah.
That's the problem. If we only opened up our mind to let intuition drive our decisions, I am convinced that we would just immediately leave our scarcity mindset behind, because we'd be able to see that there's no reason to be afraid anymore.
This makes me think that the age gap of people that listen to us, it's mostly from like 25 to 35, let's say. And I think that a lot of people give themselves the luxury of thinking about purpose or connection to their intuition once they've reached a certain financial stability. This space is also to show a little bit that you can have purpose at work and do something that you like, love, or feel part of without losing this financial stability. And now, as you were saying, the new generations, Gen Z, Millennials, Gen Alpha, they've changed their order of priorities. And purpose has become top priority. So what would you tell to someone young that doesn't have that financial stability but would like to find this purpose?
That's a big question, because it's very easy to say you should do this or you should do that. When you don't have financial stability, it's hard to be conscious, right? When you lack oxygen, the first thing that goes away is your consciousness, right? So it's hard to say, if you're going through a hard time, trust things will get better. And unfortunately, that's the only thing I can say, because I think the answer to what you need to do is always within you. It's always within you. I think that deep down, and this may sound a bit crazy, but we come here for a purpose. I think we come here for a purpose. We're not here by chance.
Sorry, finish.
And life is always giving us everything we need to accomplish our purpose. So you will say, okay, someone that's going through a horrible experience, how could he have chosen that, right? I don't know. But I think that every experience you have in life, and I know of people who've gone through incredibly bad experiences in life, which is it's hard to imagine someone that's had a harder experience. And they've been able to surrender to life. What I've seen is that people who actually surrender to life and learn to surf life the way it's presented to them, that they accept it as it comes, which doesn't mean they resign themselves. It's different, accepting from resigning, right? Resigning is actually the opposite. When you accept life means, okay, this is what it is. It doesn't mean I cannot do anything. It means I let's see what I do about this, right? And when you confront a life situation with an open mind of acceptance, and you just open yourself up to see what comes next, what's the best thing you can do given those circumstances, and you let your intuition make that decision for you, you take the best next step, which maybe is not the final solution, but it's going to take you somewhere that maybe it's not going to take you out of the horror, but you'll be in your way out. And if you keep doing it, eventually you'll be like, oh wow, I made it. Wow, the chain of synchronicities, things that happen that have taken me here, and you'll be grateful for every life situation you went through, because that's what took you there, right? So I think that this is hard to understand if you have not experienced it before. And many people will say, yeah, right. And many people will think, yeah, you're in a great situation. It's very easy from your situation to say that, but I hadn't been always in this situation, and I've gone through very rough patches in my life as well. And there's not been one single time in my life that I've gone through a hard time, and after a certain time I've looked back and I've understood the meaning of going through that, and I've appreciated and been grateful for that life situation.
You've just said something that was my initial question when I stopped you, which is you've just described how you found meaning from every situation that life has given you, but then previously you also said that we're here for a purpose. So it's as if the meaning was written. How do you describe that? Like, what are we really here with a purpose, or do we create our own purpose?
Well, let me ask you a question first. For you, do you think life is the outcome of chance? Do you think life happens by chance? That there's life in the universe by chance? That life is the outcome of a random process in the universe?
Yes.
You think so?
I think so.
Okay, so you don't think that there's any form of or let's say intelligence or something that drives the universe?
The source of intelligence that I think that drives the universe is energy and the different energetic vibrations, and for me that's what you were describing as this intuition. But I wouldn't think that there's an intelligence that created life millions and millions of years ago in the moment of the Big Bang, for example.
Okay, so what you're describing, to me, it's a form of intelligence that's non-rational intelligence, right? Mm-hmm. Probably we could converge on that. We could say there's what we call intelligence, which is the ability to process information and find solutions to problems. Mm-hmm. Cognitive intelligence. Let's say that's a form of intelligence. I don't think that's the kind of intelligence that drives the universe.
Okay.
Which doesn't mean that the universe is stupid. Which doesn't mean that it's just a random process that out of absolutely nothing. Which, by the way, well, before the Big Bang, what was there before, right?
Yeah, that's a good question.
The idea of before is also a big question, because if there was no time, which is what they say, there was no time, so there's no before either, right? Yeah. So, but anyway, that's hard to understand from in a cognitive way, right? It's impossible really to understand what that means. My understanding is that intelligence, there's a higher form of intelligence that has nothing to do with what we call intelligence. That's the source of our intuition. It's the source of everything that explains why we're here, right? To me, what I call spirituality is connecting with that, right? It's not connecting with this God that religions describe. It's not. It's something else. It's really tapping into the source of everything. The source of, to me, it's actually the source of consciousness. I don't think also consciousness is the result of neural interaction in the brain. Nobody has been able to, and that's important. People don't know that.
Describe it, exactly.
Nobody has been able to demonstrate that consciousness emerges from the interaction of neurons in the brain. Nobody really understands how consciousness emerges or where it emerges from, and science, or most scientists think that it comes from the brain, but there's many scientists already who are saying this makes no sense. there's a fundamental consciousness in the universe, which is also connected to this source of intelligence. So intelligence, consciousness, all that, even love, I would say, right? Where's love? Where's love coming from, right? What is love, right? There's a song like that. There are forces in the universe that we just don't understand. We experience them. We experience love. We experience intuition as a form of intelligence. We definitely experience consciousness. It's the most fundamental experience we have. It's what gives meaning to life. Imagine a life without being conscious of it would be meaningless, right? Mm-hmm. So consciousness is the most fundamental aspect of our experience. So for me, those things are fundamental, just like the other laws of the universe, right? And when I think in those terms, I think that our presence here has a purpose, right? The fact that we exist has a purpose, which is not a rational purpose the way we understand purpose. It's something that's connected with the, let's say, the way of understanding purpose of that kind of intelligence or whatever it is, right? Now, what we cognitively can interpret as purpose is something that's, let's say, a fractal of that higher universal purpose that explains why life exists, yes. Right? So that's my way of understanding purpose. Why I'm here is connected to a higher purpose, right? And this higher purpose to me is connected with the source of consciousness, the source of love, the source of intelligence, and I experience all of that. I experience all of it, and I feel it. And if I let those universal forces that explain why I exist, mm-hmm. and I let them drive me, I know that I'm on the right track. Mm. When I let my brain interfere with those feelings and process love in a certain way and condition love to certain things. If this happens, I love you, but if not, I don't love you. And things like, and we create conditional love, and we trust intuition when it's in agreement with our rational understanding. But if not, we don't trust intuition. And all those things that we do as human beings, which mean not being transparent to the universal forces that drive us and our purpose for being here, when we do that, we are away from our essence. When we become more transparent to those forces and we just flow with them, we go with the flow, we are a more genuine expression of a purpose that we don't know what it is, but we can feel how it unfolds through us. That's the beautiful thing. You don't know what your purpose is, but you know that if you trust your intuition, if you trust your love, what love is trying to tell you to do, because intuition usually comes from the heart, right? So if you trust that, you know that there's a push that's telling you, go there, go there, mm-hmm. go there. You don't understand why. But if you do, then you start understanding, oh, this makes sense. And then you create a rational purpose. Oh, I'm going to create a festival. And that becomes your purpose. And then you keep flowing with that. And all of a sudden you feel this passion. It's like, I need to sell my company. And my purpose now becomes, I need to create a foundation that does this thing. And now you think that's your purpose. But what's happening all the time is that there's a purpose that's not final. That's like, it's a road, right? Purpose is not the ultimate goal. The purpose translates into milestones, goals that you keep achieving, and everyone is the platform of the next milestone. And that's how you build a life of purpose.
Wow, I love that answer. I had never thought about it in this way, but it's a bit contradictory to how I think, because life is in constant movement. So everything is infinite, but everything is finite and everything is going to end. So I think I really, really like this way of putting it. And I think it's actually the perfect way of ending the interview.
Fantastic.
I think it's going to be a lot of food for thought for all listeners in the way that they approach their work, their personal purpose, how they invest their time, and also a lot of food for thought on what's going to happen in this new form of work, consciousness, maybe not capitalism, structure. We'll see how we call it. And I hope this space has given all our audience just, like that ounce of, okay, what can I do with me being more connected with what I want to do. So thank you so much.
Thank you for inviting me. It's been fun.